Wow, this is cool. So you've given me a bunch of research on off-road vehicles.
Yeah, we're going to do deep dive.
Awesome. Uncover some facts about this hobby, right?
Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll look at everything, like the history, the different vehicles,
Cool.
even the impact they have, on the environment
Yeah.
and what the future looks like.
I'm ready.
Off-road vehicles, that is.
So what counts as an off-road vehicle?
It's more than just SUVs.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about anything that's designed to handle, paved roads, but also those rough, unpaved trails.
So it's built for adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those off-road vehicles, they have some key things that make them stand out. Like, think about those big tires
Yeah.
with the deep treads.
To really grip the ground.
Yeah, and their suspension systems.
Oh, to handle the bumps.
Yeah, and sometimes, instead of wheels, they even have caterpillar tracks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Like I'm thinking Jeeps,
Yeah.
Land Rovers,
Yeah.
those dune buggies that tear across the sand.
Yeah. Exactly. You got it. Those are all great examples. And here's a fun fact, a surprise. You ready?
Oh, yeah. Hit me.
Modified off-road vehicles
Mm-hmm.
were in use as far back as the early 1900s.
No way.
Really? I know, right? Way back then.
Wow. I had no idea. Tell me more.
So in Russia, they had this system. Instead of the typical tracks, they used this flexible belt
Wow.
to navigate the rough terrain.
Mm,
It was cool.
yeah.
And guess what? Later on, Citroën, in France.
Hmm.
They adopted that for their vehicles.
That's so cool. I did not expect that little history lesson.
I know, right? It's interesting.
But it kind of makes sense when you think about it, the need to conquer different landscapes and rough terrain. It's been around for a while.
It has.
What about after World War II?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't that make off-road vehicles more popular?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After the war, they had a surplus of vehicles like the Jeep,
Oh, yeah.
and that really fueled the whole off-roading hobby.
Makes sense.
People took those Jeeps, they were rugged, military grade,
Perfect.
and they repurposed them.
Yeah, for civilian use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the start of, off-roading as we know it.
So from a war machine to fun and adventure?
I know, right? It's pretty amazing how it, evolved.
Yeah.
But as the hobby grew, the manufacturers, they started adding more stuff, more features, more comfort,
Mm-hmm.
and those basic utility vehicles.
Yeah.
They slowly transformed into the luxurious SUVs we see on the road.
Okay, so SUVs are kind of the most recognizable off-road vehicle.
Yeah.
But there's all these other vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Purely for off-road thrills, right?
Yes. The adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
you're talking about rallying, desert racing, rock crawling.
Ooh, those sound intense.
Oh, they are.
Can you just break it down? What makes each one so unique?
Okay, so rallying. Imagine, right, modified cars on public roads,
Oh, wow.
zooming through forests,
Crazy.
tight turns, high speeds.
The driver has to be really skilled.
Oh, for sure. They need precision, split-second decisions,
Yes.
and you know what? The co-driver is important too.
Oh, yeah.
They need to work together.
That sounds intense. Okay, and then there's desert racing,
Yes.
which obviously takes place in the desert.
Yep, wide open spaces, challenging terrain.
So the vehicles have to be able to withstand the elements.
For sure. Like the heat, the landscapes.
Yeah.
And there's dune bashing. That's where you tackle these massive sand dunes.
Really?
Oh, yeah. In vehicles like the Toyota Land Cruiser.
Wow. Speaking of sand, how do you even drive on dunes? Isn't it, really hard?
Well, there's this trick, right?
Oh, okay.
You lower the tire pressure before you hit the dunes.
Really?
It creates a larger surface area so the vehicle doesn't sink.
Oh, okay.
Snowshoes on snow.
That makes sense. Okay, now ATVs?
Oh, yeah.
All-terrain vehicles?
All terrain, all excitement.
Why are those so popular?
I know, right? They can conquer all sorts of terrains.
Yeah, and they're small.
They're compact, maneuverable,
Mm-hmm.
perfect for exploring areas where bigger vehicles can't go.
That's true. So what are they used for besides, recreational riding?
Oh, for so many things. Farming, search and rescue.
Wow.
Even the military uses them.
Really? Okay, but here's a note for everyone listening.
Yeah,
ATVs are not street legal in most places.
that's right.
So we're talking about off-road adventures, not for the streets.
Exactly. And speaking of responsible use, ATVs,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the three-wheeled ones.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about those. I think there were some safety issues, weren't there?
There were.
Yeah.
Between 1987 and 1997,
Mm-hmm.
they actually had this voluntary thing
Really?
to stop production for 10 years.
Wow.
because of safety concerns.
Yeah, I think they were seen as more unstable
Yeah.
than the four-wheeled ones, right?
Exactly. People thought they were dangerous
Oh, okay.
and even illegal, in some places.
So that's why they switched to the four-wheel design.
Yeah, to make it safer and to prevent rollovers.
Gotcha. Okay, so now off-road motorcycles.
Yes. For those who prefer two wheels.
I can't leave those out.
No. You got motocross and enduro,
Okay.
both, thrilling forms of off-road motorcycling.
Okay, but what's the difference?
So motocross,
Mm-hmm.
you race on closed off-road circuits.
Okay.
Jumps, bumps, tight turns.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. Requires incredible skill.
I bet.
Enduro,
Yeah.
it's more about distance, longer races, cross-country,
Oh, okay.
time trials,
Yeah.
and often through, really challenging, varied terrain.
So both require a lot of stamina and skill. What about the word motocross? It's a mix of languages, right?
I know, right? It's cool. So moto comes from the French word motocyclette,
Okay.
and then they shortened it.
To moto
Exactly, and they added cross-country.
to get motocross.
Yep.
Okay, let's switch gears.
Okay.
Let's talk about snowmobiles.
Oh, yes. Conquering the winter wonderland.
Those are designed specifically for snow and ice, right?
Exactly. They don't need, roads or trails.
Wow.
Perfect for those vast frozen landscapes.
I've always been curious, how do they work? The track in the back, the skis in the front?
It's a great design.
Yeah?
Right? It's evolved over time.
Yeah.
Older models,
Mm-hmm.
you could fit 2 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But most modern ones,
Yeah.
it's just one rider.
For more speed and maneuverability.
Exactly. And speaking of speed,
Yeah.
they're used for all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah.
Like snowcross racing, trail riding, freestyle,
Wow.
even summer drag racing.
From winter wonderlands to summer speed demons. That's incredible. Okay, but we got to talk about safety.
Yes, very important.
Especially with all these vehicles we're talking about.
Sure.
What are some general safety considerations for, all ORVs?
Okay, well, one thing to remember, these vehicles, especially SUVs,
Mm-hmm.
they have a higher center of gravity.
Compared to regular cars. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're more prone to rollovers,
Yeah.
especially during turns.
Okay, so how do you prevent that?
Well, responsible driving, of course.
Yeah.
Like avoid sharp turns at high speeds.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful of the terrain.
Right.
But equally important is safety gear.
Oh, yeah, of course. What kind of gear are we talking about?
So helmets,
Yeah.
eye protection,
Mm-hmm.
gloves, boots. You never know what you'll encounter out there.
It's better to be prepared.
Always.
Yeah.
And with ATVs,
Yeah.
there's this alarming statistic about accidents, especially for kids under 16.
Oh, yeah. That is really concerning.
It is. It's actually prompted discussions about, age restrictions and safety training.
Yeah.
The American Academy of Pediatrics
Mm-hmm.
and the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Yeah.
They actually recommend that kids under 16 shouldn't ride ATVs at all.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a reminder that, responsible use and safety precautions are super important no matter what vehicle you're using.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we talked about personal safety, but what about the environment?
Yes, off-roading has an impact.
How so?
Well, just driving off-road can damage the soil and the plants.
Really? Just
Yeah.
from driving?
Yeah, the weight of the vehicles, it compacts the soil,
Oh, okay.
so it can't absorb water as well.
Right.
And the tires, they can, dislodge soil and rip up plants,
Oh, wow.
especially on slopes.
Yeah.
And once those plants are gone,
Yeah.
erosion happens much easier.
Oh, so it's like a chain reaction. The vehicles mess up the soil, then it becomes vulnerable to erosion.
Exactly. And then that leads to even more damage.
Wow. Okay, so what else?
Well, there's also noise and air pollution,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
especially with those older models,
Yeah.
the 2-stroke engines.
Those aren't as good for the environment.
No, they're not.
I know people have been worried about the noise pollution affecting wildlife.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Imagine, right, a peaceful habitat,
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly the roar of engines. It stresses the animals out,
Yeah.
disrupts their behavior.
Yeah.
It can even mess with their communication, their breeding patterns.
That's sad.
It is.
And what about the air quality?
So newer vehicles, right,
Mhm.
they have stricter emission standards,
That's good.
but those older 2-stroke engines, they release a lot of pollutants.
Okay, so older vehicles are definitely worse for the environment.
Yeah.
Are there any, specific examples of how ORVs have affected certain species?
Oh, yeah. There are actually a lot of studies on this.
Oh, wow.
One example is the ghost crab. They live on sandy beaches.
Oh.
And they're mostly active at night.
Oh, so they're more likely to be run over by vehicles.
Exactly. Especially if people are driving on the beach after dark.
Oh, no.
One study found that even just a little bit of night driving can really hurt the ghost crab population.
Oh, wow. So even just a little bit can have a big impact.
They can.
Are there any other examples?
Yeah, they did research on American oyster catchers.
What are those?
It's a bird, and they nest on beaches.
Okay.
And they found that ORVs driving near their nests,
Yeah.
it can really mess with their breeding behavior.
Oh, wow. Like how so?
They spend more time defending their nests and less time, incubating the eggs.
So it's not just direct harm, but it's also affecting their natural behaviors.
Exactly.
It sounds like it's a tough balance.
It is.
Enjoying off-roading while minimizing, the impact on the environment.
It's a challenge, for sure. But you know what? It's being addressed.
Yeah, it's good.
Through management strategies and education.
That's great. Okay, but I think this is a good place to stop for now.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot, from defining what an ORV is to the history and the impact on the environment and what's being done to manage that.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but there's more to discuss. So join us for part 2 of this deep dive.
We'll be back.
We'll talk more about those management strategies.
We will.
And how different places around the world are, dealing with the challenges of responsible off-roading.
That would be interesting.
We'll see you then. Okay, so we're back and ready to keep going on this ORV deep dive.
Yeah, that's really fascinating stuff.
In part 1, we talked about the impact ORVs can have on the environment.
Right.
And you mentioned some really successful ways, some strategies that different places around the world are using to manage that impact. I'd love to hear more about those.
Yeah, it's amazing. So many different countries and organizations are getting creative.
Yeah.
To find that balance, between letting people have fun and protecting nature.
Makes sense.
Like one cool example.
Yeah.
The travel planning process in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. What's that all about?
So it's the U.S. Forest Service
Mm-hmm.
and the Bureau of Land Management.
Mm-hmm.
They use this really detailed process
Okay.
to figure out, which roads and trails are okay for ORVs.
Oh, interesting.
They look at everything, like how sensitive the environment is. If there might be conflicts with other people using the area, like hikers or horseback riders.
Right.
Even the cultural and historical stuff. Is that land important for other reasons?
Wow.
It's really about making sure ORV use is a good fit for that specific spot.
That's really thoughtful. Are there any other examples, from other parts of the world?
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
Like in the UK,
Yeah.
there's Off-Road Motorsport UK.
Okay.
They're all about responsible off-roading.
Good.
They actually give out these special permits
Really?
for organized events, so everything's done right.
Oh, cool. So it's not just about rules, but working with the people who love off-roading.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what else is really cool? Technology is playing a big role, too.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Things like airborne remote sensing and GIS.
I'm not sure I know what those are.
They're super helpful, trust me.
Okay.
So remote sensing, it's basically like, imagine taking pictures from the air.
Oh,
But it's
yeah.
more than just pictures.
Yeah.
It's gathering data. And then with GIS, we can take all that data
Yeah.
and make these awesome maps of the areas where people go off-roading.
So we can see the whole picture.
Yeah. And then we can analyze it,
Okay.
figure out where the sensitive habitats are,
Yeah.
see if erosion might be a problem.
Interesting.
We can even use it to predict stuff and make better decisions.
About ORV use.
Exactly. It's like having this bird's eye view,
Makes sense. But even with all these great strategies, it still comes down to the people, right?
It does.
How do we make sure everyone's doing their part?
That's the tricky part.
Mhm.
Education is huge,
Yeah.
especially when someone's buying an ORV for the first time.
Right.
Imagine getting a brochure at the dealership
Okay.
or watching a quick video.
Yeah.
It tells them all about the environmental stuff and how to be responsible.
I love that. Catch them right when they're excited.
Yeah, get them started on the right foot. But what about the people who are already experienced?
Yeah, good point. How do you reach them?
Well, you got to get the word out there. Public awareness campaigns.
Like what?
Posters in popular off-roading spots.
Yeah.
Social media.
Oh, good idea.
Videos online. That kind of thing.
Keep it engaging.
Exactly. And I like the good stuff too.
Like what?
Like, hey, if you're responsible, you get to keep enjoying these trails.
Right. It's not just about rules, but protecting what you love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's working. People are starting to get it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's this whole movement
Awesome.
for sustainable off-roading.
That's great to hear.
People are cleaning up trails, speaking up for responsible management,
Yeah.
even choosing more eco-friendly vehicles.
Wow. So the future's looking pretty good.
I think so.
Yeah.
We just got to keep the conversation going,
Yeah.
encourage those innovations,
Yeah.
and make sure everyone feels like they're part of the solution.
I love that. Speaking of the future, you mentioned earlier about projections in the USA, pointing to growth in off-roading. Even if, like, the percentage of people doing it goes down a bit,
Right.
doesn't that seem kind of counterintuitive?
It is interesting, right?
Okay.
So the thing is, even if a smaller percentage of the population is into off-roading in the future,
Yeah.
the total number of people doing it will probably still go up.
Oh, because of population growth?
Exactly. More people, more off-roaders, even if it's a smaller percentage overall.
Okay, so then the challenge is managing that increase without messing up the environment.
You got it. It's going to take, like, smart solutions, good management strategies, and, of course, people got to keep being responsible.
Right. We can't rely on, like, the government or anyone else to do it all for us.
Exactly. We all got to be in this together.
And you also mentioned earlier technology,
Oh, yeah.
like the airborne stuff and GIS. Are there any other cool things coming down the pike that could change how we do off-roading?
Oh, yeah. There's so much happening.
Okay. Tell me everything.
Well, electric ORVs are a big one.
Oh, yeah. Like electric cars, but for off-roading.
Exactly. And as the batteries get better and we get more charging stations, it's becoming more and more realistic.
That's so cool. What are the advantages?
Well, for one, they're way quieter.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's great for the environment, less noise pollution.
Yeah. Imagine exploring a forest and you just hear the birds and the wind.
And no engine noise.
Exactly.
And, of course, no tailpipe emissions.
So much better for the air quality in those areas.
Way better.
Yeah.
And the tech is just going to keep getting better.
Right.
Longer range, better performance, and hopefully cheaper.
That's great to hear.
I'm excited about it. Oh, and there's another cool thing.
Oh, what's that?
Autonomous driving technology.
You mean like self-driving cars, but for off-road?
Yeah, like self-driving ATVs, motorcycles, the whole deal.
Wow. Is that really happening?
Well, maybe not fully autonomous just yet,
Yeah.
but we're already seeing some cool features.
Oh, like what?
Lane assist, adaptive cruise control, even obstacle avoidance.
That would be so helpful, especially on those tough trails.
For sure. And it could make off-roading more accessible to people with disabilities.
Oh, that's awesome. Opening up a whole new world for them.
Exactly. But of course, there are some concerns too.
Yeah, what are those?
You know, with autonomous vehicles, there's always the question of safety,
Mm-hmm.
especially off-road.
Yeah. It's unpredictable out there.
Exactly. How do you program a vehicle to handle every situation?
Right. What if something unexpected happens?
And, you know, some people might say it takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Part of the thrill is being in control, navigating the challenges yourself.
Right. So you got to be smart about how we use this technology.
Definitely. We want it to enhance the experience, not ruin it.
Exactly. So the future of off-roading, it's going to be a mix of things.
Yeah,
Technology, caring about the environment, and what people want.
it's a lot to juggle.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one trend we're seeing,
Yeah,
more and more people are thinking about sustainability.
that's awesome.
They want to enjoy off-roading, but do it in a way that doesn't hurt the planet.
Yeah, leave it better than you found it.
Exactly. So what are they doing?
Yeah, what are the signs?
Well, they're using low-impact riding techniques.
Okay.
They're getting involved in trail conservation,
Awesome.
and they're even switching to those eco-friendly vehicles we were talking about.
Like the electric ones, it's great that people are starting to think differently.
It is. Organizations like Tread Lightly are doing amazing work to help educate people.
Yeah, I've seen their stuff. Really promotes responsible practices.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
So I'm really optimistic about the future.
Me too. It seems like we can have both, you know? The
Yeah,
adventure and protect nature at the same time.
that's the dream.
Mm.
But it takes everyone working together.
Right, from the people who manage the land, to the companies that make the vehicles, to us, the people who love off-roading.
Exactly. We all got to be part of the solution.
Okay, so before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, let's circle back to safety one more time.
Yeah, always important.
We talked about rollovers before and wearing the right gear,
Right.
but are there any other things to think about when it comes to safety, specifically for different types of ORVs?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Each vehicle has its own quirks, you know?
Okay.
So with ATVs, one big thing, we got to be really careful with young riders.
Yeah, that's a major concern. We touched on that earlier.
Right. Age restrictions, proper training,
Yeah.
and always having an adult around.
Super important.
And it's not just about age, it's about responsibility.
Yeah.
No matter how experienced you are, you got to wear the right gear.
Right. Helmets, eye protection, gloves, boots, the whole shebang.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got to pay attention to your speed and the terrain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Steep slopes, loose gravel, water crossings, those can all be tricky.
Okay.
You got to adjust how you ride based on what's around you.
Be aware and ride smart.
Exactly. Now, with off-road motorcycles,
Yeah.
same principles apply.
Okay.
Safety gear, responsible riding, knowing the terrain. But you got to think about the type of riding you're doing too, right?
Yeah, like motocross versus trail riding.
Exactly. Autocross, you're jumping, going fast.
Yeah, higher risk of crashing.
You bet.
Yeah.
So you need extra protection.
Like what?
Chest protectors, knee pads, shin guards, the works.
Wow.
Trail riding.
Yeah.
It's more about navigating obstacles.
Yeah.
You got to adapt what you wear and how you ride based on what you're doing.
Makes sense. Okay, now snowmobiles. That's a whole different ballgame.
Oh, yeah. Winter conditions.
Yeah.
That's a whole other level of safety.
For sure. Cold weather, ice.
You got to be careful.
What are the biggest risks?
Well, hypothermia, frostbite, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, if you're out in the cold for too long.
Exactly. So dress warm, layer up,
Yeah.
and keep an eye on the weather.
Good advice. What about the ice? Isn't that slippery?
Oh, yeah. It can be treacherous. Even experienced riders can wipe out.
Wow.
You got to watch out for black ice, changes in the terrain. Always wear a helmet, of course.
Yeah. And what about breaking through the ice? That's scary.
It is. Especially when the ice is thin.
Right.
Early in the season, late in the season, you never know.
Yeah.
So always check the conditions. Don't ride on thin ice. And tell someone where you're going.
And when you'll be back.
Exactly. Just in case something happens.
Always a good idea. So no matter what you're riding, safety first.
For sure. Respect the vehicle, know the risks, and take precautions.
Great advice. Okay, ready for the last leg of our deep dive?
I am. We're going to go global.
Ooh, exciting.
See how different countries and regions are managing all this.
How they're promoting responsible off-roading.
Can't wait.
All right, we're back. Ready for the final stretch of our off-road adventure.
Absolutely. Let's see how the rest of the world handles this whole ORV thing.
You mentioned before that the UK takes landowner permission very seriously.
Oh, yeah. They've got some pretty strict rules.
Okay, fill me in.
In the UK, you can't just go driving off-road wherever you want.
Makes sense. Whose land is it anyway?
Right. It's all about respecting property rights. So they had this thing, the Road Traffic Act of 1972.
Oh, okay.
And it basically says driving any motor vehicle off-road
Yeah.
without the landowners, okay, that's a big no-no.
So no sneaking onto someone's property for a joyride?
Nope, it's actually a criminal offense.
Wow, they're serious. What about, like, public lands?
They're a bit more lenient there.
Okay.
They allow organized events,
Oh, okay.
but only for short periods.
Makes sense.
Anything longer than 14 days a year,
Yeah.
you need planning permission.
Gotcha. So they're keeping a close eye on things.
Exactly. They want to make sure ORV use is done right.
That's respondable.
Okay.
Okay, now let's hop over to the U.S. We've already talked about how the Forest Service and the BLM manage things. Any other interesting examples?
Oh, yeah, there's the Big Cypress National Preserve
Where's that?
down in Florida.
Sunny Florida.
And guess what? They actually created it with ORVs in mind.
Really?
They knew people loved to ride there,
Oh, cool.
so they made specific areas just for that.
So people can go wild without messing up other parks.
Exactly. It's all about finding those dedicated spaces, you know?
It's a win-win.
Yep.
Now let's head up north
Okay.
to Canada. Lots of wide open spaces up there.
Tons of wilderness.
How do they handle ORVs?
Well, they face a similar situation to the U.S., you know, balancing the fun with protecting nature.
Right.
But they've got these, like, assessment frameworks.
What are those?
They use them to figure out the best policies.
Okay.
They look at all sorts of things.
Like what?
The impact on the environment, of course, but also the economics, how it affects people's lives, health, and safety.
Wow, it's a very well-rounded approach.
It is. They try to get the whole picture.
That's smart. Okay, we've talked about the UK, the US, Canada. Anyone else doing things differently?
Oh, yeah. South Africa has a really interesting approach, especially on the coast.
Oh, yeah. What do they do?
They're pretty strict.
Okay.
Most beaches, no ORVs allowed.
Wow. Why so strict?
They're really focused on protecting those coastal ecosystems.
Makes sense.
You know, the plants, the animals, all that.
Right.
But they do have some designated areas
Oh, okay.
where you can ride, but under controlled conditions.
So it's not a total ban, but they're very careful.
They are. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Right. Protecting nature while still letting people have some fun.
Exactly. It's cool to see all these different approaches, right?
It is. It shows you there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
You got it. Every place has its own unique challenges and priorities.
True. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to touch on snowmobiles again.
Okay.
We talked about safety, but what about managing their impact, on the environment?
Yeah, that's important too. Snowmobiles can definitely have an impact, especially in those delicate winter ecosystems.
What are the main concerns?
Well, when a lot of snowmobiles go over the same area,
Yeah.
it compacts the snow.
Oh, okay.
And that can be bad for the plants underneath.
Right.
It can even change how snow melts, which affects everything.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it can mess with the water, the animals, the whole ecosystem.
So even though it's snow, we still got to be careful.
Exactly. And of course, there's the noise.
Oh, right. Just like with other ORVs.
Loud engines can really disturb the wildlife, especially in those quiet, remote areas.
So how do we manage all that?
Lots of places are setting up designated trails,
Okay, makes sense.
putting in speed limits, and even closing certain areas.
Yeah.
Especially during, breeding seasons or when animals are vulnerable.
So it's about concentrating the activity and minimizing the disturbance.
Exactly. And just like with other ORVs, responsible riding is key.
Respect the environment, stick to the trails.
Exactly. We got to protect those winter wonderlands, too.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. From the history of ORVs
Yeah.
to the different types,
All the environmental stuff.
safety,
The social impacts.
how different countries are managing it.
And what the future might hold.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. And I hope everyone listening has a better understanding now.
Yeah.
Off-roading, it's more than just a hobby.
It,
It's something we need to be thoughtful about.
if we want to keep doing it.
Exactly. And it's up to all of us to do it right.
Riders, land managers, manufacturers, everyone.
We all have a role to play.
Absolutely. So as we wrap things up, I want to leave everyone with this thought.
Okay.
The future of off-roading, it's really in our hands.
It is.
We got to make good choices,
Yeah.
be responsible,
Mm-hmm.
and support those policies and technologies that help us protect nature.
I love that. We can enjoy off-roading and keep those amazing places healthy.
That's the goal.
Well, that's a wrap on our ORV deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this adventure.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, happy trails, everyone.